The boy Inter didn't want. How Franco Baresi became football's greatest defender. In 1974, a football club in Milan looked at two brothers from the same small town, the same bloodline, the same hunger, and chose only one. They kept the elder brother. They sent the younger one away, calling him too small, too fragile, not worth the risk. That rejected boy would go on to captain their fiercest rival to the top of European football, lift 3 European Cups, and be called, by Diego Maradona himself, the greatest defender who ever lived. This is the story of Franco Baresi. Trevigliano, Lombardy, 1960. A modest town outside Brescia, where factory whistles marked the rhythm of the day and football was played on dirt, not grass. On the 8th of May that year, Franco Baresi was born into a working-class family that had little money but an abundance of one thing: love for the game. His older brother, Giuseppe, was already chasing a ball through the streets, and young Franco followed, always a step behind, always trying to keep up. He was small. He was quiet. But on the pitch, something different emerged. A boy who watched the game unfold before it happened, who seemed to sense danger before it arrived. Neighbors would later say he never played like a child. He played like he was already thinking 3 moves ahead. By the time he was a teenager, both Baresi brothers had caught the eye of Inter Milan, one of Italy's most storied clubs. It should have been the beginning of a dream. Instead, it became the first heartbreak. Inter scouts decided they only had room for one Baresi. They kept Giuseppe. They dismissed Franco, deeming him too slight, too underdeveloped, unlikely to survive the physical brutality of Serie A. For most boys, that rejection would have ended the dream entirely. For Franco, it became fuel. Refusing to give up, he crossed the city to Inter's greatest rival, AC Milan, and walked into their youth academy carrying nothing but resolve and a quiet, burning need to prove everyone wrong. He was around 14 years old. He had no idea he was about to become the heartbeat of a footballing dynasty. The years that followed were not glamorous. Baresi trained relentlessly, working his body and his mind in equal measure, absorbing the tactical instincts that would later define him. He made his first team debut for Milan in the late 1970s, a slight teenager thrown into a league of hardened veterans. He was undersized, unheralded, and playing in a defense that demanded brutal physicality. But what he lacked in size, he compensated for with something rarer: anticipation. He read passing lanes before they opened. He timed tackles with surgical precision. Coaches who watched him in training began to whisper that this scrawny kid from Trevigliano saw the game differently than anyone else on the pitch. By his early 20s, that whisper had become a roar. Then came the peak, the years that would transform Franco Baresi from a promising young defender into one of the most revered figures in the history of the sport. He was named captain of AC Milan, a role he would hold for an extraordinary 15 seasons, longer than most players' entire careers. Under him, and later under the tactical revolution brought by coach Arrigo Sacchi, Milan built a defensive unit that redefined how football could be played. Alongside Paolo Maldini, Alessandro Costacurta, and Mauro Tassati, Baresi became the organizing intelligence behind a suffocating, high-pressing, zonal defensive system that opposing attackers simply could not solve. He was not the tallest. He was not the fastest. But he controlled space like a conductor controls an orchestra, directing teammates with a glance, a shout, a subtle shift of his body that closed down an entire passing lane before the ball had even been played. The trophies came in waves. 6 Serie A titles draped over Milan during his captaincy. 3 European Cups lifted by a club that, under his leadership, became the most feared team on the continent. He amassed 719 official appearances in the red and black of Milan, a number that still staggers historians of the game, representing 2 full decades of unbroken loyalty to a single club in an era when players increasingly chased money across borders. He earned 81 caps for the Italian national team and was part of the squad that shocked the world by winning the 1982 FIFA World Cup, a young reserve absorbing lessons from champions twice his age. He would not remain a reserve for long. 12 years later, in 1994, Franco Baresi delivered what many consider the single greatest act of will in World Cup history. Weeks before the tournament in the United States, He suffered a serious knee injury that should have ended his tournament before it began. Doctors operated. Recovery timelines suggested months, not weeks. Baresi refused to accept it. Through an agonizing rehabilitation that bordered on the impossible, he clawed his way back onto the pitch in time for the final against Brazil, captaining his nation on a knee that had barely healed, playing through pain that would have kept lesser men on the sideline entirely. The match ended goalless after extra time, forced into a penalty shootout under the scorching Pasadena sun. Baresi stepped up first for Italy. He blazed his shot over the crossbar. He sank to his knees on the turf, hands over his face, sobbing in front of a global television audience not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of having given absolutely everything and still coming up short. Italy would lose that shootout. But the image of Baresi's tears became one of football's most enduring symbols of what it means to sacrifice everything for the shirt. He played on for Milan for 3 more seasons, his body slowing but his mind as sharp as ever, still marshalling defenses well into his late 30s. In 1997, at 37 years old, Franco Baresi finally walked away from professional football. His testimonial match drew legends from across the sport, teammates and rivals alike gathering to honor the man who had redefined defending. In an unprecedented gesture, AC Milan retired his number 6 shirt entirely, the first time in the club's history a number had been permanently withdrawn from circulation. 12 years later, the club would repeat that honor for only one other player, his successor as defensive icon, Paolo Maldini, and his number 3. Retirement never truly separated Baresi from the club that had shaped his entire life. He stepped into work with Milan's youth teams, passing his knowledge to the next generation of defenders. He briefly ventured abroad, accepting a role as director of football at Fulham in the English Premier League, overseeing scouting and academy development before the pull of Milan brought him home. For years afterward, he served as an ambassador for the club, appearing at matches, mentoring young players, and embodying the values that had made Milan's golden era possible. In 2020, the club named him honorary vice president, a title that recognized not just what he had won, but who he had remained, humble, loyal, and inseparable from the badge he had worn for 2 decades. Now to the present. In February 2026, Franco Baresi stood inside a packed San Siro one final time, not as a player but as a symbol. Chosen to carry the Olympic torch at the opening ceremony of the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics, he later described the moment as the most powerful emotion of his entire sporting life, admitting his legs trembled as he held a flame that carried the weight of sporting history in his hands. It would be his last public appearance. In the months that followed, his health declined following a lung procedure, and on the 31st of July 2026, at the age of 66, Franco Baresi passed away. Tributes poured in from across Italian and European football, from teammates, rivals, and a new generation of players who had grown up hearing his name spoken with reverence. AC Milan described his integrity and his example as permanent parts of the club's identity, a legacy that would outlive any trophy case. Franco Baresi was never the biggest player on the pitch. He was never the fastest, never the most physically imposing. But he became something rarer than a great athlete. He became the mind at the center of a football dynasty, the boy Inter didn't want who turned rejection into the foundation of legend. From the dirt pitches of Travagliato to the summit of European football, from a devastating penalty miss to a torch held high above San Siro one last time, his story is not just about victories. It is about a small, determined boy who was told he wasn't good enough, and who spent the rest of his life proving, with every intercepted pass and every trophy lifted, exactly how wrong that judgment had been.